When you first set out to build a brand, or if you hear from people that it's important to have a brand, it can be really confusing about what that actually means. Here in this video, I'm going to break down the visual side of branding, your brand identity system, all of the different elements that you should consider when you are putting that together so that you get a picture of what your brand actually is on a very practical, tangible level. Keep in mind though, this is only the tip of the iceberg. This design process, this creative process really shouldn't be completed until after you know what your brand stands for. I always like to say, build your brands on truth, not trends. We don't want to just go out and have a pretty brand. It'll have some positive effect for our business, but chances are we'll probably outgrow it, or maybe we'll even, worst case scenario, confuse people in the market because what we're communicating visually doesn't match who we are on the inside. So I'm going to assume that you've already done that work as we move into this discussion. If you haven't, I invite you to check out my website. I have tons of resources that help you solve that equation of who your brand is at a core level instead of just here on this surface level, but we'll move on. If you haven't met me yet, my name is Kaye Putnam. I'm the psychology-driven brand strategist. I'm so thrilled that you're here hanging out with me in my orbit here on YouTube. Welcome back if you've been watching already, or if this is your first time, welcome. Love to have you here. If you want to get more branding intel, insights, and knowledge, hit the subscribe button below. And at the end, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. It's super helpful and helps more entrepreneurs, more smart humans like you find this content. We're going to start with the most obvious piece of your brand identity system, and that is your logo. Ideally, your logo has some symbolism built in. Whatever the text style is that communicates what your business name is in alignment with who you are. So if you are modern and future focused, then you have some type that represents that. Likewise, if you are a more traditional, timeless business, you have type that suggests that. And there's different types of logos. Sometimes you have a text-only logo, which can be wildly effective. If you think about many of the biggest brands in the world, they do just have text as their logo. So that is completely 100% viable and effective. I work with a lot of humans who are in smaller businesses, and one of the most common things is like, this doesn't look like a logo, it's just text. But your logo doesn't have to communicate everything in your brand and your business. It just needs to be a very clean, in alignment design that you can use in many, many, many different situations. So you need to recognize that your logo is going to be used in lots of applications. So it needs to look good on the web. It needs to look good in color, in black and white. Generally, you want your logo to be very, very simple. You can have an icon, or you could have like an emblem or a badge that's a part of your logo as well. And again, we just want to keep that as simple as possible so that even when the logo is teeny, 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 tiny, you can still see the content of the logo. You're not completely obscuring the meaning when you reduce the size. Likewise, it needs to be able to read well when it's really, really large as well, say on a billboard on the side of a highway. So there's all sorts of implications about where and how your logo is going to be used. Maybe something a little bit more of a modern example would be if you have an app, if you're a software-based businesses, you have to think about like what that little icon on the home screen would be. So that would be part of your logo. Maybe it's just an initial. So take a look at some of the brands that you admire, and then make sure that you're building your logo based on who you are, not just copying something that's out there in the market that looks cool. And then also release the fact that your logo doesn't need to have your entire brand story embedded into it. It doesn't have to be this like series of 12 icons or 12 symbols that represent everything there is to do with about your brand. It just needs to be a distinguishable mark that people are going to recognize. Likewise, we also need alt marks. So this could be your logo rearranged. So if you have a generally horizontal logo, you might want a version that is mostly vertical. So you can achieve that by stacking it in different ways, or maybe like different sizing, that kind of thing. Or maybe you just need to have a little symbol. Think about that little favicon, the little symbol that is up in the tabs of our browsers when we're on the internet. What would your little symbol be? Or if you, again, have an app, what would that little symbol be? You can also have things that I call either watermarks or stamps. These are submarks that you're not using as your primary logo, but it still does represent your business. So a lot of times they are literally in a circle or in a square like a stamp would be, and it can be used as a design accent to add more variety and interest into your brand and in your business. The third element in your brand identity system are your brand colors. This freaks some people out, and I do have another video completely on brand colors, but it's really important because it becomes a symbolic representation of our brands, and our subconscious minds make associations on that subconscious level, and we also recognize things on that subconscious level. So the golden arches or Tiffany blue can literally tell us what a brand is just by a certain color hue. So for most of us, that's probably not going to be the case, but it definitely doesn't hurt to create repetition by having a signature brand color palette. For me, I typically recommend for my students, entrepreneurs that I'm working with, and for myself, we generally start with a palette of 5. So you have a dark neutral, maybe it's black or nearly black. You have a light neutral that's white or nearly white. These are used generally for text colors or backgrounds. And then you have a primary brand color, an accent brand color, and then a call to action color, which is going to contrast the rest of the palette so that it visually jumps out. That would be the color that's used like on buttons or things that you really want people to pay attention to. So having a set color palette is a really great way to start creating consistency and recognition in your brand. As you go along, you may have more colors than that, particularly shades of your primary colors that you're using in different places, but we won't dive into the weeds there. Just know that you need to have specified colors so it's not changing from platform to platform to platform. Fourth one would be the font that you're using. I generally recommend a suite of no more than 3 fonts for brands. And this would be a headline font, a body font, and then a accent font. Not everybody needs an accent font. It's actually kind of trendy. It's probably going to go out of style at some point. But I myself use an accent font in my brand. It's a script that I use to call out specific words or to just add a little bit more visual interest into my brand. So your headline font, everything needs to be readable. You don't want to go too crazy with your fonts, but your headline font, you do have a little bit more creative license to express yourself just so long as it is still readable. You want that to be in alignment with who you are, like we were saying before. We don't want it to be this childish, round, soft-looking font when you are a hard-pressed attorney in New York City. Obvious example, but people make these kind of faux pas all of the time. Our body font is going to be the most simple of them all. Generally, we want to stick with one that is typically going to be a sans serif on the web, but that isn't a hard and fast rule. There are websites that use serif fonts, but overwhelmingly, people tend to like to read serif or sans serif fonts in body text. Body text meaning like long paragraphs of text. So we want it to be very simple, very easy to read, and something that complements what you chose for your headline font. Five is where we start to get a little bit more advanced and broaden our scope a little bit. It is the different styles or elements that you're going to incorporate into your brand. And I'll use my own brand as an example because I think that it'll help illustrate. I have certain textures, 2 signature textures that I use in my brand quite often. And again, it creates this repetition. People know my work when they see it because I've been using similar styles. I use the same building blocks even when I'm reconfiguring into a new product or a new blog post or a new video. So one of them I use is a white marble, and then the other one that I use is a copper metallic accent. So think about your brand. Is there some type of signature texture or pattern that you can use in different places to help increase the recognition? Another area that's related to this would be like if you have specific shapes or styles that you use in your brand. So a lot of SaaS companies these days are using this very specific illustrated style of humans, which is great. I mean, it looks fantastic, but you don't want to look like everybody else. So what is your particular style going to be for your buttons, for any illustrations, for your icons? Are you going to have borders or shapes that you're using often in your business? I tend to stick with like straight lines, triangles, and squares because I want to represent the stability of my stage archetype. I want to represent certainty and clarity that I'm teaching my students in the courses and the products that I sell. So it's all been intentional. And once I made that decision of what my signature style was going to be, I don't have to think about it anymore. I just have all of these different elements that I can rearrange in different ways. And the beautiful thing is I can actually work with multiple designers to bring together all of my different assets in new ways, but it still looks like me. I'm not tied to one specific designer that can help me be my brand. And then finally, the 6th element of our brand identity system is our photography and our images. So best case scenario, you have professional photography taken specifically for your business, whether that's of you, if you're the entrepreneur. I do this quite often, at least once per year, or maybe it's of your product if you are a retail business. Incredibly valuable assets that you can use again and again and again in your brand. Alternately, you could also curate a batch of stock images. Some of my favorite sites are Pexels, Unsplash, and I think those are my 2 favorite free ones. And then my favorite paid ones are Stocksy, istock.com, and then depending what your brand style is, Death to Stock Photo is quite good, but they have a very particular style. They're not quite as agnostic as the other ones. So that might give you a good place to start. And literally just pulling them together into a collection or a curation gallery, whatever the language is on the website that you're using. And then having that as a resource for you to go to whenever you need an image for a PDF or for a presentation or for social media. It shortcuts that process. Plus it ensures that you're staying on brand because you want to make sure that you have similar tones, similar brightness, similar color themes that are showing up. Plus you have to consider the content of the photo. So you want to have either people that look like they could be your ideal client, situations that your ideal client aspires to or desires, and or metaphors or symbolism that you want to incorporate into your brand. So there you have it, 6 of the primary elements for a brand identity system. Let me know in the comments, are you missing any of them? Do you need to spend some more time either redesigning or reimagining one or all of these elements? I'm curious to hear, and I'm excited to hear from you. I hope you're having a great day. Remember, give this a thumbs up if you found it valuable. And let me just share a resource if you want help putting this all together. My brand new brand signature course, it's like my flagship course. It's the first one I launched and it's gotten multiple upgrades all over the years. It walks you through the process of building your brand from A to Z. And 1/4 of the course is focused on exactly what we're just talking about here, your visual identity system. And then it helps you document all of those decisions that you're making into a full-fledged brand book that you can then hand off to creatives or hand off to your team or to designers or copywriters to help you be your brand in the world. And it's also incredible clarity for you as the founder, the entrepreneur who is building your brand. So that is the way that I can support you in this process. Have fun. It is really beautiful to see brands come together, but just remember, don't skip all of the foundational work first. Otherwise, you'll be redoing this process again in a couple of months, and it won't be as good and as powerful as it could be. Have a great day. I'll talk to you guys soon.